Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Prioritizing Transparency and Inspiring Efficiency, sponsored by Solinftec. I'm Robin Sitberg of Meister Media Worldwide, publisher of CropLife magazine. In this webinar today, our speakers will talk about digital solutions, including AI-assisted scheduling, integrated in-field communication, real-time operational control, and reliable scheduling for increasing customer trust. We'll have time for some questions at the end of the webinar. So if at any time during the presentation you'd like to ask a question, just type it in the question pane at the lower left part of your screen and click Submit. You can do this at any time during the webinar, and we'll take care of questions at the end. We have two speakers today, and I'll just briefly introduce them. Our first speaker is Carlos Hirsch, Head of Sales at Solinftec. Carlos grew up in Brazil and helped his dad manage their family farm until moving to the U.S. in 2006. He has a BS in agronomy and an executive MBA from Washington University. And he has over 20 years of experience in entrepreneurial roles across agriculture, finance, and retail organizations. Along with him is Amanda Warnke, Regional Sales Specialist at Solinftec. Amanda grew up in southwestern Minnesota and still resides on her family farm. Her history in row crops and degree from UW River Falls and agriculture business has helped develop interest in precision agriculture, and she has worked with several brands and types of digital ag. So they both have a lot of information to share, and I'm going to turn the program over to Carlos.
Thank you, Robin, and the CropLife team for this opportunity. And thank you all of you in the audience today for sharing your time with us. So welcome to our webinar. Again, my name is Carlos Hirsch, and I'm talking to you today from St. Louis, Missouri, my home office. And I'm happy to be here today with my colleague, Amanda.
Thank you, Carlos, and good morning to you all. Again, thank you for joining us. And as Robin mentioned, my name is Amanda Warnke, Regional Sales Specialist, and I cover basically the upper Midwest, Minnesota, North and South Dakota, and Northern Iowa. We would like to go ahead and just get started and visit with you with why we're here today. And as we roll into our presentation, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of our topics of discussion. What we're going to start with is an introduction to Solinftec and our company's scope. And then we will address our look at custom application operations today and navigate some of those pain points. And we'll cover communication and transparency needed to operate on the highest level of efficiency and really our inspiration for moving forward. Once we wrap all that up, we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes for a Q&A at the end. So without further ado, I'll hand it back to you, Carlos.
Thanks, Amanda. So with this being our first webinar here in the U.S., I'd like to do a quick intro about the company before diving too much into the technologies that we develop. You may be aware that Solinftec is an ag tech company that started in Brazil and now has business in 9 other countries. And by the way, our office here in the U.S. is at the Purdue Research Park in West Lafayette. But that kind of just scratches the surface about us. What you may not know is how the company really started. And you know, you hear stories about startup companies that have 1, 2, 3 founders. Well, we have 7 founders. And those 7 founders, their background was in process and automation. So they're process and automation engineers that at the time were called to help a problem with these massive sugarcane mills down in Brazil, where they have the issue of not working consistently. That this massive piece of machinery were stopping frequently. And they soon find out that the problem wasn't really the mill or the equipment installed there. The issue really was the uneven flow of product coming from the field. That's what was making the industry stop all the time. So that was kind of the one aha moment. It was just the tip of the iceberg, really. They developed then software and hardware to collect the data and understand how time was spent out in the field. And using that knowledge, solutions were built to help that company. And overall, they were, after using the solutions, they were cranking 20, 30% more work hours and making the mill, by consequence, more efficient. So those issues with uneven flow of product were gone. The other big aha moment was that you don't want to have processes in agriculture separate. They believe that automation and process operations have to be looked at as a whole and not as individual groups. So, and it naturally feels like they are separate, but really got to be looked at as an entire process. So today, most of our customers really have their entire operation under our platform, all the way from soil preparation all the way to harvest.
Yeah, and those are big pieces of what we stand for. And as we go forward here, we're going to show you an image. So this was actually our very first large-scale customer. They're now called Agvend. They're a joint venture between companies called Shell and Kozan, which you might be familiar with. Together, they make up a really large agriculture operation, right? So they're expanding 2.5 million acres, distributed across 26 different facilities, and they cover about 5,000 machines under that management. After a few years using our system, they actually realized that they could control their entire operation under one system and under one location. They named that office the Pentagon for being the main center that deals with all those locations in real time, 24/7, 365 days a year. They improved their operations by about 20% just by avoiding issues before they happen and improving their machine hours.
Yeah, and another similar example to that is Costco International, who's the CEO. In a picture above, you can see stating the almost 40% improvement they had just on their harvest machinery. And as these examples were happening, one fun fact here was one of those customers, as they were removing machines out of the fleet because they gained so much efficiency, they parked actually one of those combines in front of their main office just to remind people that they could do more acres with fewer machinery. And the result of that is not that we create more hours in a day, mainly you're turning the idle and travel time into work time. So we do have a unique way to look at problems. Like I mentioned before, you got to look at it as an entire process. But we also have a unique way to, and a different philosophy actually, on how to solve for those. And what we do is to bring that understanding that collecting data as autonomous as possible and in real time is the big deal. We don't believe that the operator should be a data clerk. The system should be smart enough to capture what it needs by itself so the operator can focus on the task at hand. And we also don't believe that ag operations can be managed by looking at the rearview mirror. They like reading this kind of post-mortem type reports after the fact. You need to be on the moment and solve for the problems that are happening and actually help you plan ahead of those. So with that kind of concept and philosophy, our evolution brought in AI, right, artificial intelligence, and we named it, our solution is named Alice, which is an assistant that allows for this kind of decision making. Alice is not like Siri or Alexa. She's more like Watson from IBM. It perceives kind of its environment around it and then take action or help you take action. And it works more at problem solving to meet those operational objectives. So it really allows for managers to have more time for business decisions while she's doing the heavy lifting and planning and logistics. So even during operations, her algorithms are constantly running to adjust for what's happening out in the field.
Yeah, and those are the big pieces as far as what we've gotten to, how we've gotten to this point. So if we can, we'll just take a second here to take that philosophy that Carlos just explained and show you what it's helped us accomplish up to this point. What we actually bring is about 13 plus years of industry experience, and they come from a broad variety of backgrounds, covering more than 22 million acres of paying clients currently in both Brazil and the United States. We have over 150 professional engineers and developers with us, and about 20 of those folks are specifically dedicated to just artificial intelligence and blockchain development. Our solution currently covers nearly 85% of Brazil's sugarcane market, which is a pretty impressive number. But then our recent expansion into row crop has actually brought about another 7 million acres into that coverage. So what might be most important to note here is with all these customers, we are truly partners with them and help them every step of the way. And even more impressively, we actually have not lost a customer since the inception of this company. Since we started operations in the United States, and that was in late 2018, we've done a lot of research and development in the field, at locations with our customers in the U.S., and we spent the entire year of 2019 better understanding the U.S. market. You know, we visit co-ops and ag retailers, visit with dispatch teams, applicators, truck drivers, really to understand all those pain points and measure the current status of their operation. We wanted to really take that time to use all the research that we're learning and learn. But we weren't naive to believe that our solution that we built in Brazil and all those 8 other countries that we're currently working in would work here in the United States. So we actually took the time to develop a unique solution here in the U.S. for the U.S. ag retail market.
Yeah, and as Amanda's explaining, our company is really in the business of partnering to unlock those efficiencies. So when you see images like the one on your screen right now, you know, you can tell this is hard work, right? And also kind of difficult to scale. So when you're working with custom application paperwork, especially, it's kind of cumbersome, sometimes even hard to track, and which leads to, you know, those long hours trying to figure out routes, schedule for your applicators, for your trucks, and your blend operations. So.
Right, and I'm sure a lot of you with us today are familiar with these types of images. You know, everyone does their part to track product and outline map routing, and alongside of that is, of course, time and placement of your application. But obviously, lack of transparency with any of those missed details of application or a follow-up with a customer could cost a lot of precious trust within the business, depending on just how severe some of those missed details are. So there are ways to obviously help clean up some of this paperwork, and then we move to a digital system without losing that valuable customer touch. Any operation can be both digitalized and optimized with the right tools and communication in place.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, not only fighting those internal process inefficiencies, but on top of that, we all know consolidations and mergers are happening in the industry, and those fleets just will continue to grow. And by the way, they don't come on the same color, right? You often have different brands of applicators, like Terragators, John Deere's, Case, not to mention all the tender truck variations that are out there. So monitoring and planning becomes more of an issue, trying to keep all those machines and operators on the same page. So it's not a small challenge. So we actually noticed all that while doing that research.
Yeah, and so with all these things in mind, let me take just a minute here to break down some of the research that we've done and show you what it's taught us. During our time in the field, we actually connected with machines that covered about 4 million acres across the U.S., and we did that during both spring and fall application. Some of the most impressive numbers and results actually came from the spring spraying application. So here what we're going to look at is in a 10-hour shift, our data showed us that about 35% of the hours in that shift were used to actually generate income. So in other words, only 35% of the time was actually working hours, right? So what happens to the other 65% of the time? Probably not surprising to a lot of you. About 30% of that time, they were sitting idle, not doing any work. And then the remaining 35% of that time was actually traveling field to field. When we did a little bit deeper into that, we actually narrowed it down to find just 50% of the idle time was, which I think it likes out to about an hour and a half of the day, was because the sprayers were waiting for tender trucks to come and fill them up. So on average, those sprayers were going about 83 acres per hour with an average working time of 11.5 miles per hour. And that's quite a variation in those speed averages. While most would actually believe that the field shape was to blame for that speed average change, we found it was a factor, but the highest correlation in those speed variations actually came from operator experience. So part of what we want to bring through these findings is how to regulate these high and low data points, right? And build confidence with those less experienced operators. As we navigate kind of the rest of our visit with you today, you'll start to see some of those pieces fall into place.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I mean, to say the least, we learned a lot during that year and continue to do that. And we know also during the research is that a lot of customers also try to adopt some digitalization type technologies for their operations. However, despite bringing some improvements in transparency and communications, they were still hungry for that efficiency gain. Their prior gains were kind of somewhat marginal when it came down to adding more acres per machine. And we believe that's due to the fact that digitization does move paper into the computer, but it doesn't change much of the way you do things. Kind of the process stays the same. So here we're still having to think on our own to plan for all those variables that a day full of work orders will bring, and therefore the efficiency issues kind of, not fully addressed.
Yeah, and let's let's take a second to fill in some of those question marks there and look at how technology uses this artificial intelligence and all this real-time data to actually bridge the process gaps and help us with time management and all those outlying variables. Our scope is really to just hone in on those current operating models that you have today and find where there's opportunity for things like growth in number of acres covered per year and per machine, as well as the number of hours it takes to accomplish a set number of acres in a day. These things are based on things like machine routes, manpower availability, and then even like cleanout times where applicable. Therein is the room for empowerment of management and all parts of your sales force and the application business within to meet your customer service needed despite all those complexities. It's actually at this point where we start to talk about variables like the weather and your product labeling. And then of course there's limits to information when it's transferred, and your communication is transferred by like cell signal through cell phones and text messages or CB radios, which is the case in most operations today. We want to bring all those types of things that can wreak havoc on your application business to the forefront and put the power of AI to work to achieve some cohesiveness and efficiency on this side of the business. With all that said, all your communication with one another and the real-time machine data needs to flow to one place, and all of that brought to you, of course, on either a desktop or mobile device for ease of use inside or outside of the office.
Yeah, that's true. And today somehow all that kind of flows through that person doing the dispatching from all these channels Amanda just mentioned, right? The radios, the text messages, the phone calls. And what we heard from the customers is that they wanted something where all that is in one place, that they could be managed. So Solinftec is doing is wrapping all those requests in one package to free up that time and show the progression and of those operations in real time. So we built the solution and transform what we learned from being there out with them in mathematical models and these massive algorithms. And those are fed with the real-time data, like the weather, the chemical product label, the restrictions, status on those machines, trucks, work orders, and so on. So as we kind of talk about scheduling and the math that goes with it, let's dive a little bit into kind of a day in the life of a dispatching person. And if you remember a little bit of your high school math, imagine that you got a dispatch on that day that you have 5 machines, you have 6 trucks, and those 5 machines have to run 10 work orders per machine. So what that turns out to be is now you got to figure out 50 work orders. You got to plan those routes, plot products, and everything. So how many possible scenarios you can come up with? So it's kind of a big number, and the right way to go about it is it's a 50 factorial. And as you can see here, it's what I kind of call the 608 gazillion options of the scenarios possible. So what AI will do is take all those scenarios down to a option, one of the best options based on the rules that we put in, the restrictions, to then come up with one schedule per machine for that next day.
Yep, and so we're looking at the schedule, and the outcome of this optimized schedule is what really saves your hours of work and still leaves that dispatcher or manager to make the changes they need. All of this is based on business realities, like moving a work order that would have been applied last for the day to the top of the schedule for the day. And that way you still get to prioritize your customers' needs as you see fit. So what we're looking at here is actually an example of one machine schedule, and in the dispatcher view, if I can have you look toward the left side of that image, you'd see there that the work orders are listed in order from numbers 1 to 7. And then to the right of that, in the map view, you can see the route that has been planned to each field. Where we see the list of work orders is actually your entire outline of work order detail, and that includes number of acres, grower name, and the type of product being applied. If there were chemicals being applied that needed to allow for a clean out, in between application, you'd actually see that there as well as the approximate time that it would take to do that. Looking to the right again, then we see that same thing laid out on the map, but it's your applied product represented in a colored dot matrix, and all those dots can be sorted by crop trait, machine work status, or work order status as well. And at this point, if you need to make a schedule change for, that customer that calls you last minute and he needs his field done ASAP, yeah, we all know the type. This is where that happens, and we actually can move, say, work order number 7, that's at the bottom of the schedule right now, to the top to be done first. It's an easy and simple way to achieve customer service, and then your applicator sees that change in less than 30 seconds at the other end. The catch-22 is actually that it could cost you more road time to do that, or get less acres done by the end of the day if you make a change like that. But our system will actually show you that at the bottom of the screen there, and as a manager, it's really your decision to make that call. It's a business decision at the end of the day.
Yeah, I can't forget those growers that call last minute, right? And on top of that, just what Amanda's explained, I guess you guys can see where this can also help others within the realm of the operation, like the agronomists and the sales teams, to know where everyone is at without having to call the location for logistics questions all the time.
Right. There's obviously a lot of value to knowing where your machines and your trucks are at for everyone at any given time to help things run smoothly, not only at the blend plants, but also from a customer service standpoint. You can give a better timeline of arrival to a field and know when it's going to be finished, barring any equipment breakdowns or weather interruptions that always tend to happen. So with this schedule setup, once you're actually good with the machine schedule, there's one more click, and that's just at the upper right-hand corner, and that sends it wirelessly to machines and trucks affected. Any of those updates, like I said, would show up immediately for your applicator, and that limits those constant phone calls and texts that you typically would have between the dispatcher, applicators, and truck drivers. The platform would also give your applicator the opportunity to see a truck coming, so that allows them to set a meet point in the field, at a certain field approach, so that truck driver can come and meet you there instead of waiting at the other end of the field for who knows how long because they can't see each other.
Yeah, that's very cool, and I've used it, and I'm sure you guys are seeing this. Looks very easy to use, and as a matter of fact, one of our customers just a few weeks ago had to stay quarantined at home because of COVID, because a member of his family tested positive, so couldn't go to the office to work, and he was able to do all the scheduling, the dispatch, all from home, and keeping his folks out there safe, running the operation.
Yeah, for sure. Not a bad tool to have as our world is changing, and obviously we're changing the way we do business too. So, and I guess I do want to take just a second to clarify something about our approach to AI in a solution of this caliber. We don't see this technology as something that's like a human replacer, like your typical Terminator approach. We view it as an enhancing and empowering tool, a tool in your toolbox that a person or a team can really implement to deal with the operations in more of an Iron Man approach, right? Where you scoop up some of your broken pieces or your broken processes, in this case, of an operation, and keep what can be extremely chaotic down to a dull roar, and it can really be run pretty smoothly at the end of the day.
Yeah, great explanation, Amanda. And let me take you guys a little bit back. We kind of dove into what AI produces and kind of results you get, but let's take a kind of 30,000-foot view and how this flow can help with the actual overall process of an ag retail workflow. And a lot of the ag retailers or co-ops that we visit, they already have some sort of an ERP system. And usually that's where you're going to do all your billing, but also that's where your work orders will come from. And if you don't have an ERP, you can still enter those work orders directly into the Solinftec system. But if you do, we can integrate with that and start the process connectivity there. So as we explained, those work orders will come in and will come to Alice to help you optimize that schedule and take some of that heavy lifting out of your hands. And then from there, what the operations manager or the dispatch team will get is that optimized schedule. Again, is not the final solution. At the end of the day, you still want that person doing those final business decisions and moving what needs to be done during the day. But once they're good with that schedule, the next step is really just to go out and dispatch that information wirelessly to all your trucks and your sprayers. And remember that communication still happening throughout the day. Remember, the algorithms continue to run. And as these work orders get completed during the day and finish those work and all the information captured during that activity, then that flows back into the ERP. That we believe that kind of connectivity, we learned that with doing this kind of connectivity with other companies, it reduces a lot of that double entry and also provides for better transparency, saving time and increasing efficiency.
Yeah, and obviously, that's the whole point, right, is to provide that true full transparency and visibility to everyone involved. What we like to do is just show you a quick video so you can see from a very small level of detail what one machine is doing, and then after you zoom out, you can see where everyone is at, right? To your team in the field and see all the action. But to be ahead of the game, you need to know where the puck's going to be going, right? That's where AI, in this case, helps by running algorithms and arranging tickets and loads of your tender trucks to minimize the weight of the rigs out in the field, which hopefully leads to happier farmers, right?
That is correct. That is correct. And that's not the only kind of information that, from each machine and truck that's important, but also what's going on during the day, especially weather, right? What's going on around you. And that's a big factor when dealing with certain products. Let's say, you have a product there has a specific rain fast time or just the news yesterday, I think you've seen it, that dicamba got another 5 year of use. This system allows you for that broad view of the applicator to get that real-time information. So the big screen there is more of like the manager view, but also the applicator on the phone there, they have that real-time weather information coming in. And with the optimization algorithms, the schedule is then built in such a way that you can select weather as being a factor for those calculations. So it becomes a variable or a restriction, if you will. And now when planning ahead and cross-referencing those product labels, the system can then optimize those rigs to be, first of all, in the right field, second, to be there in the right time, and also within having the right product and looking for weather, try to match the best weather condition for that application. So then you just don't gain efficiency and time, but also quality of that application. So as the day also will progress, those weather changes, adjustments can be made, and both the office and the applicator have that information live. So then you don't need to be switching from one app to the other, basically.
Yeah, and as we're kind of talking about some of those chemical applications, as we know, and Carlos alluded to there, the regulations, of course, aren't getting any easier. And today we're basically falling back on a paper trail of each application, which makes things a little bit more cumbersome. I actually want to just share, I remember visiting a customer not too terribly long ago, and we walked into their boardroom and the table was just covered with paper forms. You ask what something like that's all about, and the answer to it is it's all work orders from one of their applicators. What they did for a specific day, and that customer had a complaint, and they're trying to figure out where the issue was. Was it a clean out issue? Was it a mix up of products? I'm sure this is probably a reality for lots of folks with us today, Carlos.
Yeah, so that kind of still falls within that our approach to save time and improve efficiency, but that's the other outcome, right? You get better compliance, additional time savings, so you have time to be at the right window of opportunity. But also, as we're collecting all this information, another might sound kind of small, but it's, as you add it up, looks big. We pre-populate these reports at the end of the day as well, so the applicator then will save another 10 to 15 minutes a day. That's what we believe in. And however, still the better value is not on creating the reports, it's really the ability to plan ahead and use this information to avoid those situations to start with, right? So kind of continuing on that line of thought, that transparency approach. Another thing we learned from our customers is to deliver that feedback. They asked us to also include the agronomists and the sales teams into this whole process. They'll definitely have a similar visibility as the dispatcher does, and we'll go there with all the applications for their customers that they're looking at during that day.
Yeah, absolutely, and those are some of the secondary benefits, right? Of course, they're hard to put a number on, but all those minutes and hours of the day that your typical sales agronomist is spending working on logistics, instead of using that time to talk to a customer, that really adds up. And as the technology evolves, we know that there's much more to learn and room to grow here. That's where we believe this does prioritize that transparency and inspire the efficiency we've been talking about. This platform really is built specifically to your business's needs, and we work step by step with integration and the implementation of it too.
True, and I know we're kind of close to the end of our presentation here, but I also wanted to provide you kind of a sneak peek of what's coming. And another area that our customers, obviously they listed it, number one priority is help me with custom applications, but number two is custom ammonia application. So that's also on the works. We're coming to help on that operation as well. So stay tuned for more to come on that.
Yep, and as Carlos said there, we are wrapping our time up with you in our presentation part of this anyway. But I do want to take a brief minute just to kind of wrap things up and show you where we started and then where we are headed. What we're going to show you here is actually one of our current customers in the Midwest, and his setup now that he's implemented our solution in his day-to-day operation. What we see here is like full circle, right? It's from paper to digital and optimization. Some of the key points of what he has is more time to make business decisions and spending so much time with logistics, and then his transparency to customers and the locations team. He can see work orders, truck tickets, and then the real-time status of each one of those on his screen. And then there's obviously the machine side of things where there's less idle and travel time while increasing that application, which means more acres covered per machine, right? And then lastly, and potentially one of the most important gains, is that you'll be able to provide better service to your customers by allowing things to be completed on time, and then your sales agronomist more time to talk to your customers. We've seen value of these types of gains and what it can actually bring to the bottom line of a large ag operation over our 14-year journey here. And it really is by prioritizing your transparency and then inspiring all that efficiency that the businesses are more successful today. So with that being said, we're going to finish our time with you today, and this will conclude the presentation part of it. I think I'll turn it back over to Robin, and we'll turn it over for some questioning.
Yes, thank you to you both. And we do have time for some questions. And if you haven't submitted a question already, go ahead and type it in your question pane at the lower left part of your screen, and it'll come in, and we'll get to as many as we can. And we've already got quite a few that have come in during the webinar, so thank you for all of those. So I'll just get started with the first one, which is how do the Solinftec solutions integrate with existing systems at each company or at each grower?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, and that's actually a really good question. There's different levels of integrations. So if you focus more on like the ERP type integration like we showed here, we usually get together with that ERP provider and we built APIs for it. We do also have APIs with other providers of data, like the weather data that we bring in that comes from IBM Weather Channel and DTN. Label information also comes from another API. So we kind of go a little bit on a custom base there, where, you know, depending on what the need is for the customer and what value brings, we'll definitely sit down and do it. We have that capability and experience with that.
Okay, excellent. Our next one is with tender truck schedule optimization. Do I need to go with automatic optimization, or can I manually set it or override it?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So definitely you can do both. We'll recommend as you become more used with the system and trust not just the dispatcher or the manager, but also your truck drivers feel more comfortable with the technology. The tendency is to, you know, use more and more automation. But at the early stages, we usually start with, I'd say probably 30% people kind of have a little issue at the beginning, and then that within a year comes down to less than single digits, like 2-1%, because you gain that trust in the system and understand the value it brings.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. This would be great if it does this. Does Alice have access to the Msds database, and does it have trait information to prevent spray mistakes like Roundup on non-GMO crops, et cetera?
Yeah. So yeah, it's a very important question, and we dealt with that a lot in the spring, and we're prepping up for the next spring, obviously. But yeah, we bring in is the label information for the products, and then what the system has is it's a matrix kind of behind the scenes. There's a matrix that cross-reference products and you know, the traits. So that helps not just to avoid those kind of issues out in the field when you're planning to make those trips out to those fields, but also helps on the clean out times. So the system is smart enough to know, okay, from this product to this next product, it's okay, I don't need to do a washout, but from this product to this product, I need to wash. And by the way, it adds that time to the calculation. So it makes all that timing calculate to understand how many acres you're going to get done that day.
Okay, that's great. It saves a lot of detail management, on manual detail management anyway. The next question is, can Alice adapt for breakdowns and other delays in real time, and can it make the necessary changes to minimize that impact?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a funny story here from our very, very first customer in the U.S. Is U.S. Sugar in Florida, and obviously by the name you can tell that they do sugarcane. They run 200,000 acres in Florida, and they're very used to the operations. Obviously, we did a full first year of implementation, and the manager there, we invited them. Before COVID, we invited him to go to Brazil to visit some of the other sugarcane operations that were running. And as he was touring the facility and looking at the screens that were showing real time the machines running. He asked the question to the guy there, like, well, what time of the day you guys stop to kind of pull the reports out of the system so you can prep for the next day? And the person presenting was like a little confused with the question, not because of language barrier. He was just like, we don't really stop. This is live. So we see when the machine stops, and we didn't get to that detail, but when we ran that quick video to you guys to show it, that machine that was running, it was green, highlighted in green because it was working. And right next to it, those other two machines were highlighted in red. That means they're stopped. And if you click on that machine, just live on the screen, it will show you what the reason for that stop is. That's the only really interaction we ask for operators to do, is when the machine stops, Alice pops a question, give you about 6 options. One of them is maintenance. One of them is lunch. One of them is I'm waiting for my truck to show up. The other one is, other issues, and you just click, and that, again, is live. So if you're the manager, you don't need to be calling that person. You can see there on the screen why that machine is blinking red.
Okay, excellent. Our next question is, are reports transmitted directly to the customer?
Currently not. We're working with different customers in different aspects of how to communicate that information to customers. Some want, the full report out. Some want those specific informations out of the report, maybe just the hour you arrived, the hour you left. So it depends of the customer, what they need, and we can customize that to that need.
And kind of a follow-up to that is, as a salesperson, can I get real-time updates on what fields have been done so I can report back to the growers?
Yeah, that was a big ask. That information is readily available today as you run the system. We're working on that Salesman app that I briefly showed here, and that was one of the main asks. Is like, I want to know when my fields are done, and I want to know when the sprayers are coming, so I can communicate that to my customer and not having to wait for a call from the guys in the operation that are obviously busy. And so that is to help that transparency that we've been talking about here. So yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. One of our viewers wants to know, most of the equipment manufacturers have similar logistics systems, so why should I use Solinftec?
Yeah.
There's a challenge.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and we get that a lot. One of the reasons, some solutions are kind of color specific. We are colorblind. We also look at the full process. So we also include trucks, tender trucks, and more than digitizing, because a lot of what those other solutions are doing, and they do a great job too, not discounting that, is mainly transforming what you do today into digital. But that doesn't do all the work, right? You actually have to help optimize that, and that's where the AI support comes in a big time. Right? Some of these massive results we got down in Brazil, and we're going to start seeing here in the U.S. Now in the next season, it's because of that assistance, right? Remember that 50 factorial number? That's just one day. The number of scenarios that you can think of, how do you pick the best scenario? Yeah, you can have, a very talented person in that seat, but that might be that one location. What about all the other 5, 10, 15 locations you have around? How do you support those folks to continue to do that, make that decision over and over and over? And as we know, at the beginning of the season, we're all fresh and ready to go, but as the season goes by, those days get longer, you get tired, and guess what? Errors start happening, right? So having this kind of support, helping you optimize for your day, really takes a lot of that work out of the table.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Another question is, if you're more efficient, won't you eliminate people?
We really don't believe on that. Actually, every place we've been and all those 4 million acres that we've been visiting with customers all the way from Kansas to Indiana and Minnesota, they actually complain that they don't have enough talented people. And the people they have, they're kind of multitasking them. So they got to jump from this tractor because they're spraying today, and then they got to jump onto the ammonia tractor. And now I'm late on my application, and now the manager has to jump in and do the spraying. So I think we actually have a shortage of talent. This is definitely going to help help coordinate all that work. And at the end of the day, instead of doing those, superhuman hours of 13, 14 hours a day, why not get it all done in 10 and go home early? So I think that actually brings a little more quality of work to help the limited workforce we have today.
Okay, good. How does Solinftec's machine learning actually learn? Like what factors go into it, and how does it evolve over time? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I'll talk to you in about kind of general terms because I'm not the expert on machine learning. We have a lot more smart people in the company than me to answer that. But in general terms, so as you think of that gazillion number I showed earlier, and that is reduced down to based on the restrictions that come up with a solution. What machine learning is doing behind the scenes is we prepare the algorithm with, I would say, general averages. So let's say a general average speed for a sprayer to be on the road and a general average speed for a field and so on. The same thing with the trucks. But as you collect data, so as we go through the year and the season, that data can be adjusted to be a more precise average. Right now, I know that when I'm on field 15, the best operator can get this field done in X minutes and X number of acres per hour. So I'll now will adjust for that, and not only adjust for kind of the system to run better, but also to help. Remember, Amanda, at one point she mentioned about how the discrepancy was on the average speed in acres per hour. That was mostly because of operator experience. The most experienced operators, regardless of the shape of the field, they were flying and doing a good job, not just rushing it. They were doing a good job because of that experience. So why not use some of this machine learning kind of, gamification or helping the less experienced, or maybe it's your first or second year doing that, or it's the first time in that field, and now you have a benchmark so you can control that speed. Remember, we're in real time, and that real time feedback can be sent out to the cab and say, hey, you better slow down here, or you can speed up because it's okay. Those things will come down the road with machine learning.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Thank you. One of our viewers wants to know what type of machines this can get sent to, and is it an app?
Yeah, great question, and I think I missed to speak to that. Yes, it is an app today. The only restriction here, it only runs on iOS devices, so you either have to have an iPad or an iPhone for it to download for now. So all you need is that hard piece of hardware in the cab or the truck. Download the app. So there's an app for the sprayer and spreader, and there's an app for the truck, and then everything connects back to the platform.
Okay. Boy, we've got a lot of questions here. They're coming in thick and fast. Our next one is, are you seeing increased efficiencies in product use by rates being more accurate and other efficiencies too with products?
Yeah, I would say in Brazil we have already, because we've been running a similar solution for longer there. Here, I think we're still in the kind of the baby steps of how do we get better efficiency overall, how do we do better planning. But it's something that will come. So today, there are two things to that equation, right? We've been told and we understand on the precision precision ag side of things that the controllers just got so much better. That these controllers nowadays, they can, to the drop almost, to tell you how much rate is going through each part of the field. The issue there is not just knowing how much was applied is important, but also knowing that it was applied the right time in the right weather conditions. So that will definitely guarantee that drop that left the nozzle right, that was, monitored by that controller really made it to the plant, and it's really efficient. Because if you're using that perfect rate with the perfect, variable rate map or whatever you're using, but you're in a windy situation or you're speeding up or you're too slow, whatever those other factors, the quality of that application will suffer. So we believe that there's going to be quality gains as well, just because now you're being able to manage for all these other variables.
Okay, thank you for that. And the next question is, do you work with any grower portal providers like Agvend or Winfield Atlas to centralize reporting for the grower?
Currently not. What we do is, as we integrate with these ERP systems, they have some of their own reporting already done. Even the billing obviously is one of the first things that comes up. So as these work orders get completed, they are forwarded back to the ERP, and then they can run those reports. But we're open to work with those other vendors, and as long as the customer is asking for that, we'll happy to do it. Actually, we don't even charge for those API integrations because we know that brings value. As a matter of fact, we learned that early on in Brazil, that the quality of information coming in once you do those integrations also increases, because you're avoiding double entry, the fat fingering issues that we know all happen now, and we're capturing the information at the point, at the end automatically. So less chances for error, and the data coming in is better. So the whole thing flows better.
Okay. Our next question is, does your solution require hardware? Just a good question. Very basic, but very important.
Sure. So as of right now, the only hardware required really is either an iPad or an iPhone. We do build our own hardware depending on the region. Early on in the U.S., we were using hardware to connect with the machine. Now we don't need that anymore. But down the road, there are other pieces of hardware that we actually design our own hardware most of the time and build. So there are other pieces of hardware that are coming that will be connecting wireless to that app. But today, if you want kind of the basic solution, you don't need any additional hardware. Really, it's just a mount for that iPad and the iPad in the cab.
Okay. Another question is, what ERPs do you integrate with?
Yeah, so in the U.S., we're currently integrated with Agvend, with AgWorks, and there are a couple others that I can't speak of because we're starting those negotiations now. But they're pretty much the other big ERP providers in agriculture, and like I said before, we're open to make those integrations because we see value, and definitely the customers and the ERP companies to see that value.
Okay. A lot of these questions are about how-tos, which makes a lot of sense. Another one is, can you draw maps and boundaries in your system?
Oh, great question. And it's a kind of short amount of time to go over everything. But yes, we during our what we call the implementation process with the customer, we try to gather as many of those boundaries ahead of time, and most of them have it. Some need to do a little homework and clean up some stuff to do kind of what we call the very big first upload. But sure, during the course of the year, we know that customers will come in, and new customers will come in, or fields change, and you can draw it on our system, and they get stored there. So you can continue with your normal routine. Okay,
good. And here's a excellent question. Do you have a pilot program?
Yeah, so especially with new technologies that we're developing, we like to partner. We like to do those pilot projects. For what I showed you today, that's already a commercial product, so you can just call us and we'll be happy to start. And usually customers will start with, number of locations, maybe 5-6 locations to start with, and then we expand. But yeah, that's has been kind of the DNA of the company from the get-go. We like to partner with customers so they can give us ideas of what their issues are, so we can develop for that, and then we do pilots with them. And usually by doing that, they are the first to experience and get value out of it. And that's how we create new technology.
Okay. We've got two questions here about tender trucks, so I'll kind of ask them at the same time. One is, can you bind a tender truck to a sprayer? And the other is, can tender trucks see their entire schedule for the day?
Right. So I'll explain kind of how the process goes. So there is this culture today that you want to sign up this truck to this sprayer all day and do it that way. So the system allows for that. And as I mentioned earlier, as we trust the system more and more down the road, you'll see that binding sometimes is actually hurting. You actually want, at one point, you want to have that fleet of trucks kind of free to go wherever the next sprayer needs help. Again, the focus here is that 400, sometimes now up to almost $500,000 of machine that is sitting idle, not being idle. So the way you do that, instead of having a $500,000 piece of machinery waiting for a $60,000, $70,000 piece of machinery to arrive, you may want a second one to keep them on this loop and go ahead and feed those monsters. So the idea of binding, you can do it, but like I said, we'll feel that later on will change. And I think the other question was about seeing the schedule for the day, right?
Right.
Okay. So, we actually intentionally did it in a way that the truck driver only sees their next order. And so they'll get directions to that field and back to the shed to refill and back out. We intentionally do it that way. So if there's any changes, like say during the day, the algorithm calculates or the manager sees that, oh, this guy's going to run short, I got to have a truck going there right now. You can quickly move that, and also keeps it very simple for the truck driver, right? And those in the call that know the environment and know the workforce there, a lot of the truck drivers are not much into this kind of technology. So we really hone into making this very, very simple. It's just one or two pushes a button and they're going. All they got to do is follow that line to the field. They can see where the sprayer is at. The sprayer can actually pin a point in a field entrance that they want to meet with them. So they'll go to the exact point without having to be lost or driving around. That we know happens. And again, the next job is just, okay, now you're time to go back to the plant, and they'll see the next ticket and continue that loop of operation.
Okay, perfect. We have time for just about one more question. So, and that one is, how much can I improve my efficiency? I mean, do you have any data or anything on that?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I'll keep it generic because it really is about each customer. We do a part of our work is usually the first year is about collecting the data, also helping improve efficiency. In the first year, you see some of those gains, but you really want to know what's your benchmark. So I'll give you generic numbers that we pull from that the result that Amanda showed earlier. So the average of those companies, they're averaging right close to almost 10,000 acres per machine a year, and these are spraying acres. Okay. If you do the math, 10,000 acres a year at a $7.5 per acre fee that you charge for spraying, that's barely breaking even for the cost of that machine. What we've seen in potential, just very low hanging fruit, that 1 hour and a half idle, that adds another 100, 150 acres potentially per day per machine. Plus some other efficiencies with routing and maybe another 20, 30 minutes a day there. And efficiency is even while spraying. we can almost double that, depending on the situation, right? Some people are already at 15, 16,000 acres per machine because of the geography, because of the experience that they have, the crew, but that's kind of the potential that we see. It's massive.
Okay, well, thank you. We do have a few questions that have come in that we're not going to be able to get to online because we want to respect everyone's time, but I'm sure that Carlos and Amanda will be happy to follow up with you after the webinar. So I want to thank you for attending, and as a reminder, an on-demand version of this webinar will be archived in the next just couple of hours, and it will be available at the same link you used to register and to come online today. And you can also find the link at croplife.com/webinars. So I want to thank you again to our audience for joining us today, and to Carlos and Amanda and to Solinftec for making this webinar possible. Have a great day.
Thank you.